counter.
It feels very
Hello and welcome to the Unwanted Opinion podcast. Hello and welcome to the Unwanted Opinion podcast, the show in which me and my friends give our unwanted opinion on all things film. My name is Lewis and I'm joined today with Kyle.
Hello.
Hello. And Gonzalo.
Hey, it's
Yes,
the
yes.
three of us back again. Yes.
Kyle's patience has really run out after.
I hate that.
Yeah, because me and Kyle are recording in the same room today for the first time in a year.
Yeah.
In the podcast shed, as I like to call it.
Fucking
The nice
fucking
cabin.
hell.
Yeah.
How do you think? How I'm next to the radiator with a
You've got a
cardigan on
cardigan.
and a shirt,
Yeah.
and I'm fine.
Well, alright, okay.
This guy's complaining.
I don't have any defense.
It's too
that's
hot.
here.
It's too hot.
and like normal fashion, Gonzalo doesn't
Yeah.
understand time, and so he forgot when to start. So that was a good.
In my
follow as
defense,
well.
I was playing with my puppy, and that was fun.
Aw.
So glad you said
I didn't
puppy.
check the time.
Oh, well, it could mean something else. To be fair. We don't know what. We've never seen
No,
the dog,
it's-
Kyle.
You have. I've brought him
I've
in front of
not.
the camera
I've not.
several
Right,
times.
right.
Have you
Sorry.
not? Okay, Kyle has.
Anyway, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about film scores. So yes, we're going to be talking about
Yes.
our favourite film scores. We're going to talk about classic film scores, what makes a good score, and the difference between a film score and a soundtrack, which there's many
There is,
confusions
yes.
over. Which
We
is
could do.
frustrating.
There's a lot of people that can rant about that topic because it is a very contentious one, I would say.
And we also have a review for Dumb Money, new Paul Dano film about GameStop and the whole stock market in 2021. So yeah, Kyle, why don't we just jump straight into Dumb Money?
I like that
which-
stock.
You like that stock?
like that stock.
So Dumb Money actually opens this Friday here
Does
in the
it?
UK and in the States. Yes, it opens this Friday. It's not out yet.
So,
Nice.
what did we go see it?
What do you mean? What did we go see it?
We saw, but it's not
On a
out yet.
Monday. We saw it on a Monday.
Was it an unlimited screening?
Yeah, it was not.
So why was it an unlimited advert?
Because I don't know.
Oh, dumb
We'll rant about that another time.
Sorry.
We're
But
just
yeah, so,
arguing now. Yeah.
yeah, so Dumb Money was directed by Craig Gillespie and written by Lauren Bloom, Rebecca
Yeah.
Angelo, and Ben Mesrich. Hope I got that right. And it stars Paul Dano, Pete Davidson, Seth Rogen, Shailene Woodley, America Ferrera, and many, many more. It's a really stacked cast.
Yeah.
And so, do you know much about this, Gonzalo? So Dumb Money is actually based off the real life
Yeah.
story of
So-
Keith Gill.
Yeah, I
were
know
you
about
aware
the
this
real
was a
life
thing?
story a bunch. Like I know about what was going on and stuff because it was like a big news thing. It happened while we were still pretty much pandemic, and like there wasn't that much going on. So like, well, I say that, but like you know, everyone was watching the news and keeping up with what was going on in the world and stuff. And I remember hearing about it. Yeah, like from what I understand it's a bunch of people who got together online to buy up stock on a company that they had like nostalgia for. It became a meme. A lot of people invested into it, and then it made the shorts of a bunch of billion-dollar companies just completely tank. Because they were betting against.
And just more and more money was being invested in that.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so like I was saying, it's based off the real story of Keith Gill, who's played by Paul Dano, who in 2020 decided to invest his money in the GameStop stock, as he believes it's overlooked. It's an overlooked retail stock that the Wall Street should be investing in, but aren't. Eventually, Keith streams because he's a big YouTuber and does live streams and Twitch.
Something? I can't
Yeah,
remember his name.
Kitty. Is it not Kitty? What did you say? Kitty something?
It was Kitty something.
Yeah, it
I
was
can't
Kitty. I can't remember
what it was.
exactly.
I'll look it up.
And so eventually Keith streams become increasingly popular, especially amongst Reddit users and TikTokers, because people are like, who is this guy? Why is he so dumb to invest in this stock? Everyone is telling him it's a dumb idea to invest in this stock. But of course, over the course of about half a year, he actually becomes an internet craze and soon gets the attention of the biggest hedge funds
Roaring
in the
Kitty.
world. Roaring Kitty, that was
Roaring
it.
Kitty.
So Kyle, this was up your street, so I'm gonna okay.
This is
So
up my street.
what did you make of Dumb Money overall?
So
thoughts?
Dumb Money. So what? Like Gonzalo said, I kind of had a basic prior knowledge because, like he said, nothing was happening. Well, apart from the world being a pandemic,
Yes,
nothing
yes.
else was happening.
Yeah.
And I found this really interesting and very educational or insightful because obviously a lot of people may not know what was happening, right? Not
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
level where it was a big short and you needed Margot Robbie in a bubble bath to explain what a
stuff.
Bond
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
you had enough information given to you that you understood where all these characters were starting off. They did a very clever thing where whenever they introduced a character, it was their location, their name, and their net worth. Okay, and obviously expanded from these hedge fund managers who are about 400 million, 12 billion, and 15 billion.
Yeah.
And then they jumped to the other characters. Roaring Kitty was about 94 grand or something like that. So you kind of got an idea of where.
And they had students who are like minus 100k.
Yeah,
net
it was
worth
like
and stuff
some
like that,
students who are in debt.
Yeah, which is like a good way of presenting those like clear economic differences in just like a big flash of just like these people are struggling. Yeah,
it was really good because obviously I didn't realize who was going to cover. I didn't know if it was just going to be Roaring Kitty and the kind of Wall Street guys. So having these kind of like regular Joes, who I don't know if they're all based off real people. I imagine so.
I imagine so, yeah, because there were a bunch of people that just invested like a little bit. Because from what I've heard, it was kind of like, you know, I mean, it is GameStop. A lot of people grew up like going there to like rent games out and stuff like that. So like a lot of people were just like the kind of casual people who like do micro investments, and they were like, hey, I have a soft spot for this company, so yeah, why the heck not, let me put like $100 into GameStop, kind of thing, you know.
Exactly. So the idea was that Wall Street, so at the time GameStop could stay open because they were selling computer mouses, which made them an essential business, which I think was some loophole that some guys are trying to follow. So it was only imaginable that they wouldn't be as successful because not many people are going out, not people are going to buy, so a lot of the time they would bet against it because they knew the stock would fall and fail.
And eventually it would go out of business. Yeah.
Which is a curious thing, by the way. I only recently learned, and I would be completely wrong here, but I looked it up, and it turns out like shorting stocks, not a legal thing to do here in Europe.
Oh, really?
Very much. Apparently it's like it's allowed in some countries and not in other countries. Well, like betting against the company.
Yeah. Also, for me, I liked Dumb Money. I thought it was pretty decent. It was entertaining throughout. I mean, it's like trim, hour 45 minutes. And I was quite entertained throughout the whole thing. Paul Dano, man, he's just. I think he's one of the best working today. He's one of those actors who's kind of under the like he's in big films, but he's just kind of. No one talks about him. Like, he was Riddler, he was in The Fabelmans, Prisoners, There Will Be Blood.
He was fantastic in Fabelmans.
Yeah, I really liked it. I'm surprised
I feel like he's just a very versatile actor. And you end up like really getting like big names when they play the same role over and over. Like, you know, like old Hollywood style where it's like, oh yeah, it's Paul Newman again being Paul Newman. You know, whereas like someone like Paul Dano, like you could really slot him anywhere and he'll be fantastic in it.
That's the thing. I think he's really adorable as Keith. And he's the perfect underdog. He plays it in like a really just like adorable manner. Who's just like, hey, he's just a little guy and he's doing his cute little streams, and then he's just like
he's just
really
adorable.
Really pleasant, really kind, and he's just the type of guy you really want to root for.
Yeah.
Who else? Pete Davidson I actually found really funny in this.
I agree. He was
which was surprising.
So he plays Keith's younger
brother.
Yeah.
And the thing is with Pete Davidson, I was saying this to you after the film, it's like he's a guy who when you see in the credits of a film, you're like, oh, Pete Davidson's in this? Really? That's going to be a bit distracting. But I've seen him in like a bunch of stuff now, and I'm like, he's actually funny in everything.
He's actually
pretty
good. Yeah. I recently rewatched the Suicide Squad, and he's really funny. He's in there for like 5 minutes. He's in there for like 5 minutes, and like he made me laugh on set.
I think there's also a good emotional core to the story. There's this whole story, kind of. During the pandemic, Keith lost his sister, and there's that whole family thing about him dealing with the loss of his sister during that time. I really like Shailene Woodley's caroling as well. She was a really like good supportive figure in the whole thing, which I liked. Seth Rogen is just kind of Seth Rogen-y.
He's Seth Rogen, yeah. He plays one of the hedge fund managers, so he's the poorest out of the three, billionaires. With, and one played by Ron Swanson. What was his name again?
Nick Offerman.
Who's
he's always good to Ron Swanson, isn't he?
It starts like painting a nice picture of Seth Rogen character where he's like raging because he's trying to build the house next door for him so he could build a tennis court for his family during the pandemic. And then he's like, the pandemic's almost over and I still don't have this tennis court. And you're like, God, I feel really bad for you. But
that's a good way of contrasting those like needs of like the hyper wealthy versus normal people.
I mean, I also kind of find stories of the side characters quite compelling.
Okay.
So you follow 3 kind of investors.
Yeah.
So you've got G.I. Joe Transformer Boy,
Marcus, who's Marcus in this film,
who works in GameStop, and he's kind of investing along the way. We have 2 college students who are kind of in the pandemic, living in halls, investing, and then you've got 1 nurse.
Yeah, America Ferrera's character.
Yes. Was she in
Barbie?
Barbie,
Yeah,
that's where I reckon.
Yeah, she's been good this year, man.
So, I thought those 3 stories were quite compelling because, not to kind of, it's the stocks, right? I'm going to say that.
Yes.
Not everybody comes up on top. So, when a lot of people maybe get off well on it, some people don't.
Yeah.
And it's that nice kind of counterbalance, because there's a point where you're like, you're all yelling in your head, sell. Why are you not selling?
And I like that. That was probably one of the strongest aspects of the film for me, is that tension where do you stop now, or do you keep going, and do you trust everyone else to stay with it?
Do you trust the community?
Yeah. It's funny that about the ensemble, though, for you, because I felt I didn't see enough of... for like Marcus, for example. I could have done more of him.
He wasn't.
And I feel like because there's a lot of characters to juggle with, I feel like some of the time, even Sebastian Stan's character is kind of the CEO of this Robin Hood trading company.
I feel they were just there.
They were just kind of there just because, like,
the kind of controversy.
And it's like, their company was essential. And
yeah, I was gonna say, like, did they get into like the whole aftermath of it? Because I do remember very strongly the whole Robin Hood thing, where like they ended up kind of like fucking over their users
They delve into that, and like that's the kind of the third act sort of thing.
They did a wee classic, little kind of short paragraph at the end.
Yeah, and all that stuff as well.
But they did. I mean, Sebastian Stan was kind of in it just for that controversy part, which is understandable.
Well, Cal, what would you give Dumb Money? What's your score?
We had this discussion. I think because it's kind of my area of life, I'm going to give it a solid 8. I thought it really communicated everything that happened well to, especially an audience that might not know. I thought every performance was brilliant, and I had a great time. I've been recommending it to the people in my uni, left, right, and centre. I would definitely give it a solid 8 out of 10 for me.
Okay, I'm not far off you. I'm going to give it a 7. Like I said, juggling some of the characters, it's not like obviously the most super cinematic film or anything. I mean, I enjoyed it. I think it's a very decent watch. I recommend people go see it. And yeah, so that's a 7 out of 10 from me and an 8 out of 10 from Kyle for Dumb Money. So let's jump into scores, Gonzalo. So
okay,
why don't we start with you? Well, you said you want to talk about classic scores or some of your favorite
So the thing is, I'm not as well versed in film scores as some other people. It's the kind of thing where, like, I guess the best kind of film scores really don't call themselves out. I would say, like, the best kind of film scores
work because I want to get into that.
Yeah, because like for me, a good film score is like it just works with the material in the sense where, like, if you hear like the leitmotif of that film score anywhere, you think of that material rather than thinking of that film score. And so, like, a lot of them don't, like, really, like, stick in my head until I hear them again, and then I'm like, oh, shit, that film score. So, like, it's only, like, the big classic film scores, like, most of them John Williams, where I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a good film score, just because it's the kind of film score where it's, like, iconic in and of itself.
Memorable,
which is interesting, because we also discussed this in some of our unpopular, I think in our Unpopular Opinion Part 2 episode or something like that. Hot takes, yeah. Because, like, you mentioned about John Williams, and I do tend to agree. Some of his film scores sound very similar to each other. I found myself humming Jurassic Park, and then someone being like, "Oh wow, Star Wars," and I'm like, "No."
Indiana
Jones, Superman. I mentioned that.
Yeah. So, like, it's the kind of thing where, like, they are great and they're fantastic, but it's also like, are they really that, like, well known because of how good the film score is, or is it just the connection with a really good popular film that everybody loved that makes these film scores elevate themselves? It's a question I'm not versed enough in film scores to answer, but you know.
Well, see, it's interesting because for film scores, for me, I agree and disagree with you slightly. So for me, film scores, I think the best ones are ones that not only match the sort of the style and obviously elevate the mood of a scene or the point of the film, or we sort of manage to tell the story and theme through the music as well. Those are kind of the strongest for me. But there's kind of two categories of that. There's ones where it does all those things, but also I find, I'll go back and listen to that because I think that's a beautiful piece of music.
Okay. Yeah.
Or there's ones like I've got, for example, your Hans Zimmer's Dunkirk score, which I think is an exceptional piece of music, but it's not one you'd ever sit and listen to. It's one that really elevates the tension of the entire film because there's that ticking clock in the background.
Yeah.
It's constantly.
It feels like if I were to want to relax, that was the last score I'd listen to.
But that is a perfect score for that film, and in a sense, that's a great score because it works for that film solely because of that. But also, you see, like some of the best scores are ones you aren't really thinking about, but. I think there's so many generic scores out there, especially for any like action film or whatever.
Oh no, definitely.
That you'll never ever, if anyone played a piece of music from that, you'd never pick up.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Like the caveat for me is like they have to like blend into the movie, but also if you listen to them, they make you think of that movie specifically, and not a generic movie. Like because you can do generic soundtracks, and there's tons of them. But like if I hear the little like musical notes of the Shrek soundtrack, for example, like not talking about like the actual not the soundtrack but the score, like not the pop music, but like that like little fairy tale hum, like I'm gonna think of Shrek. It's like that kind of thing where like for me, if you can hear that leitmotif and it brings you back to that mood that movie set up to, like a really good one that I can think of, despite how much I hated the last season, the Mandalorian theme. Fantastic. Every time you hear those wee 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 wee, you're like, holy shit, let's go.
That's the score that it feels like it's westerny, but it also is sci-fi. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think that's Michael Giacchino actually, who's one of the best.
Yeah,
who did
he's fantastic.
Batman and The Incredibles and stuff.
And exactly like you said, like it basically creates like this weird alien, otherworldly sound, but still makes it very reminiscent of those old spaghetti westerns. Because after all, like the show was pretty much like a western, kind of like bounty hunter goes out into the wild kind of thing, So like it's like that kind of thing. Like I can think as well of like a really good one for like the Spider-Verse movies, like those leitmotifs that each one of the characters have. The way they play with each other, the way it works with like the score works with the soundtrack instead of just like pausing for the soundtrack to play and then starting up again, like the way it blends it, like that's fantastic. I
suppose we should just specify what score and soundtrack really are.
Yes, get into it.
It's kind of, there is a little crossover. So score is just the musical composition made specifically for a piece of film. Just the orchestra, occasionally there might be some vocal work in the background. Things like that. No lyricals, no bands coming in, no artists coming in making a titular song for the film. No Celine Dion, no Lady Gaga for Top Gun. None of that. That is not score. However, score, it's like what's the saying again? All fingers are thumbs, but not all. No wait, what was it? The thumbs thing again?
All thumbs are fingers, but not all fingers are thumbs.
Thank you. Because
it's weird that you couldn't just like get it by thinking about it. It's not all
scores are soundtrack, but not all soundtracks are scores.
Exactly. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Kyle. Exactly. Score can be encompassed within the soundtrack, which has bands and how many artists or whatever are singing along or.
Because it's
like
that. When you think of Star Wars, you think of the score.
Yep.
When you think of Ghostbusters, you think of the soundtrack.
Yes.
Because it's the song.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that kind of balancing act of it.
Thank you. You're making it simple. He's done. He's done.
Yeah.
You're making.
You're telling this shit.
You can have pop music. Yeah, because you can't have like pop music that is composed specifically for a movie. I'm thinking like the Cars like song about life is a highway. Like that was specifically made for Cars. Fantastic song. But like it's not part of the score for the Cars movie.
Exactly. Yeah. Good. Well, Kel, because you've made yourself stand out, we're gonna come to you first and ask you one of your favorite, film scores.
Just as when Gonfalo was saying fantasy.
All right.
Something clocked in my head, which I was shocked that I didn't think about this.
Yes.
Which is Lord of the Rings.
Yes. I mean, that's
I don't know
classic.
why that didn't clock in my head, because that's one of them where if I instantly hear that music, I know it's fantasy. I know it's high tech.
James Horner,
there's some aspects of it that are nice and peaceful. Like, you know, you listen to the Hobbits and the shit, you know, you're like, lovely, and you get to the bit the more intense. I would say out of all scores, I think Lord of the Rings is the one I put on most casually.
Really, that's You know, it's funny because when we did our hot takes thing, and I made my controversial statement about a lot of 20th century golden age or big blockbusters of the 20th century music, how it's all kind of samey.
Yeah.
James Horner, what he did for Lord of the Rings is truly remarkable because he made the big, epic, sweeping, adventurous music, but he also makes really intimate stuff. He makes stuff you can listen to, like the score for Gollum's theme. It's fucking beautiful.
Yeah. I will say, as someone who doesn't enjoy the Lord of the Rings franchise, that score is fucking fantastic. Like, honestly,
it is so nice.
It's creepy as well. You know, the whole like.
It feels
like
very
so good. Yeah,
it feels very like
telling a story.
Like folkloric, but like in a grand way.
Yeah,
because you get that like eerie vibe from it. Even like the most subtle ones, because like even like the Shire soundtrack for the Shire, which is like really nice and calm and happy and stuff, has like a little bit of something under there that makes you feel like, oh, something's about to go wrong, kind of thing, you know? Like it is really subtle, like it is really nice.
I mean that's kind of an undisputed classic. That's one of those ones where it's like not only is it one of the most popular, biggest pieces of film score ever now, but it's also one that everyone was like, that is a fantastic piece of music that James Horner put there.
It's probably the one I put on most in the background. Definitely other scores I'll have for specific situations that I'll definitely have them blasting.
And when we're talking about film scores and how that's a score that elevates the material, that's one that elevates the film. Because if a score can elevate what you're seeing and not just be something in the background or something that's, you know, just setting the scene, it can really elevate it. That is what that does.
I tell you what elevates a score that elevated the scene for me. The Batman.
The Batman score is...
That elevates whatever scene.
Great.
Yes.
That genuinely, that was incredible.
Michael Giacchino, there we go.
Oh, definitely Lord of the Rings is up there as one of my classics.
Yeah.
Trying to think what... I don't know. See, I'm a controversial. Like I said, I said this to Lewis. Just the intro of Monsters Inc.
Just the intro.
Cinema.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's because of the meme it became, but just one last one. I quite like the Pirates of the Caribbean soundtrack.
No, that's good. Another Disney one, Hans Zimmer, of course.
And I really like it because, for me, when we talk about elevating it, I just remember as a young child, I haven't watched these films in a long time.
Yes.
The last time I saw any of them, I think, is when I watched the 5th one in cinema, whenever that came out.
2018?
2018. That's the last time I saw any of the Pirates of the Caribbean. As a young child, when you heard that, I was like,
I mean, look, that is genuinely, they went to Hans Zimmer. Just make us one song that just instantly makes this thing adventurous, and he was like, all right, just whips that out, you know, instantly makes the whole thing, right, I'm in for the ride now, you know.
I used to play it at work quite a bit.
Oh really?
Yeah,
just want to get you hyped.
On the boat, I genuinely did. I had it on a wee speaker that is still in a certain somebody's office, which I can't
legal, can't say.
Yeah, he's stolen it.
Oh, he stole it.
I kept blasting the Pirates of the Caribbean soundtrack.
What about you, Gonthal? So, give us one of your favorites.
I really, really have like a soft spot for the soundtrack of How to Train Your Dragon, the DreamWorks movie. Who was it? John Powell. Yeah, he's worked on a lot of the DreamWorks projects, hasn't he? Yeah, I fucking love the soundtrack for that first movie. Specifically, the piece like The First Flight. Oh my god, that to me is one of the most... I don't know, it just captures the moment so well. It's supposed to be this moment of wonder, awe, and connection between two different worlds, and it just feels like that, you know, like it's... It just hits different. Like, I cannot imagine that scene without that same soundtrack, and I feel like throughout the movie it is very consistent, the way that he plays with, like, the motifs of each one of the characters, mixing them and contrasting it, and it just elevates that whole movie for me, honestly. It's a fantastic work of art, yeah.
I mean, I think we're all giving really good examples of when scores are, like we're saying, elevating the material. Because... would How to Train Your Dragon? I know you'd say it's one of your favorite scores, but would that film even be?
No, it wouldn't work. No.
It wouldn't work without a score like that.
No. That's the thing for me. Like, I feel like the score is absolutely essential for it. And I know there's certain films and certain genres where you can get away with a fantastic product without a score at all.
For sure.
Like, that's a thing that you can do.
Yep.
But, like, for me, specifically, that moment would not work without it. And I think in general, for animated movies... Yeah. Like... Come on, guys. The first 10 minutes of Up, would that work without the fantastic score?
No, absolutely
It wouldn't.
No.
Like, it doesn't matter how great the visual storytelling is, how glorious the animation, how fantastic the direction. Like, without the music taking you through those ups and downs, like, I feel like a good score is like... You know, it's like that magic rag in Aladdin that just like, you know, just sweeps you off and helps you like actually go with the wind. Like, you can have the breeze going, but without something to hop on and carry you through that, it's kind of hard to get into it.
And I feel like is pretty much been a part of film since the beginning. Obviously, you weren't able to have sound in film, so they literally just had live musicians play the stuff on screen and have cues. But yeah, I mean, look, for me, okay, well, because I want to, you know, because I made my controversial statement about 21st century film scores being better than 20th century film scores, I have one of my favourite scores, and this is a very, very, very cliche, and once again, another classic, and that's Vangelis' Blade Runner score. I mean, that is pioneering on what it was doing. And it's got some stuff to say about it, Cal.
There we go.
So... what is really interesting about that score is that you think of it being this meticulously crafted as if from day one Vangelis were there with Ridley Scott and the crew working on how to really make this world as atmospheric or as interesting as possible. But actually, they literally just worked off rough videotapes they gave them, and they literally, in the studio, had a TV, and they just kind of watched the film, and then the band just played stuff. They just went... let's just, whatever you see, play what you feel, and it just came off that. Just these guys just watching it through, watching a rough
fucking
cut
musicians,
and just doing
though.
it.
Holy shit, the talent of those people. Fuck me. Can you imagine that? Like, just watching a rough cut of Blade Runner and just fucking improvising one of the best scores of all time.
Look,
oh my gosh.
I mean, obviously the biggest thing about it, I mean, I can't remember who labelled it. There was some, I don't know if it was The Guardian or some other newspaper, but they just labelled the opening track as some of the best use of synth of all time in any piece of music. And what's interesting as well about the music for Blade Runner is that the CDs of it didn't get released till like a decade later, till like 1994. And when it got released and on vinyl, it skyrocketed in the UK to, of all record sales, it was number 14 in the charts of all music. So including all the top artists from every single genre, it became one of the highest selling pieces of music during the time. And obviously synthesizers were introduced in the mid 60s, I'm pretty sure. And then kind of became, I remember where Wendy Carlos's A Clockwork Orange, she kind of used synthesizers in that, which is a very, very popular film score as well.
But this was an interesting way of using them as well for like more of a jarring kind of effect and more of like a big of like a shocking and electric kind of feeling in that, rather than like the way, because like the way they're used in like Blade Runner, it's like it's integrated, it's part of the atmosphere. It's not like
it is the world. Sounds
that's
like
how it sounds. Like that's how the world sounds.
And so they use synthesizers like the Yamaha CS80 as well as the Roland Instruments Pro Mars Jupiter 4, the CR 500 drum machines as well, and of course one of the standout instruments, the saxophone, which stands out beautifully. I mean, of course, it's a noir film, so they had to get something to sort of amplify
That's the thing
that
for me. That's
feel.
The thing for me. Yeah, that's the thing for me. Like, the choices of music, like, they clearly understood what the genre they were going for was, and, like, they elevate that feel, because the saxophone, I mean, it is an instrument. It's one of the coolest sounding instruments, in my opinion. But, like, the way they use it, it's just as a callback to that kind of, like, noir essence that the movie has. And, like, it completely grounds this kind of, like, weird world that's just like so alien to us and like something familiar. It's like, this is fucking weird, but also I mean, it's just Casablanca, guys. Come on, we know this.
I mean, if you just play the first 10 seconds, it's literally just called Love Theme. Not very original idea for a piece of music. It's literally just called Love Theme. the saxophone, you just like just comes bursting in, and you're like, oh my god,
like
I'm
Kenny
not going
G
to stop
walks
listening
into
to
the
this
room.
piece of music. You know, so
Yeah.
Love Theme is a one major track I really love, as well as Rachel's theme and Tears in the Rain, which is undeniably
Yes, I mean,
really just makes that emotional ending just hit really hard with that monologue. It's just beautiful because it just feels so innocent as well as like ethereal. It's just so like pure, and it just really hits that monologue home by Roy Batty. It's a lovely piece of music. Bye. Kyle, but you got
I
got another one back to you.
Seriously,
Yeah.
This is annoying me because as more we're talking, the more ones are just popping into my
Oh,
head.
it was good.
Right. So interesting point where you were talking about how it wasn't filmed with the music, the soundtrack, the score in mind.
Yeah.
I remember very much when I watched the re-release of John Carpenter's Halloween.
Oh,
and he had
yeah.
the Q&A, pre-recorded obviously. I'm not that interested.
You
I'm
didn't
a person.
see John Carpenter in the flesh. Yeah.
He was talking about that. That was very much how they went around making that first Halloween film. It's just that they recorded everything, filmed everything, viewed it, and then went, yeah, we need something in here because
this just doesn't work.
It's dumb if there's no score. And obviously, I think that kind of initial, kind of like, I think it's an incredible kind of score.
It's
really
so simple.
Gets it.
It's so effective.
And it's one of those scores that you play that people go, oh, Halloween. And it's probably helps because he's named it after the holiday, because I don't know how many people would actually interpret it to Michael Myers as a character. Two more, bear with me. One's pretty obvious, but one I think is a bit me.
Okay.
Harry Potter, I have to admit.
Look, once again, John Williams.
Just saying it.
I mean,
right?
It just works. It does.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get these masters like we're talking about, Hans Zimmer or John Williams or Michael Giacchino, they just have something. They just see a piece of film, or they just see a storyboard, or they just talk to the directors or the crew, and they're just like, yeah, all right, and they just can instantly make something that is just otherworldly.
Honestly, that first movie would not feel as good as it does with that score. Yeah.
It's that I would also maybe occasionally ever have. You mentioned Michael
Giacchino.
Giacchino,
yeah.
Right? 2009 Star Trek.
Did he do the score for Star Trek? Oh my god, the more you know. I love that.
Oh my god, I love the score for Star Trek.
That's another hyped up bit.
That gets you hyped.
That first film, when the Enterprise rises up from Saturn's rings, and it's the score, and I fucking love that. I don't know why we said synthesizers, and then I was just thinking of it.
Yeah, Star Trek,
and
of course.
I was like, oh wait, Star Trek, that's such a good score. And underrated, I would say, because obviously those kind of films have stopped.
Yeah, most people think of obviously the TV shows and the original themes and whatnot.
Yeah, I was gonna say, who did the original theme for Star Trek? I'm googling it because I have no idea.
I can't remember the instrument they actually used for that. It wasn't a synthesizer.
No, it was like an L shape. Because you put a metal rod in it,
and it goes like kind of like a metal detector sort of thing.
Yeah,
it's kind of the sound it makes.
Is that how they did Doctor Who?
Probably, yeah. Probably is the same thing.
I will say, the new Star Trek movies that Michael Giacchino scored, like, they are another great example of like blending like pop themes with like the score, because like we do have like a lot of pop music playing through those new movies. But like the way they blend into the score and the way they're taking down into the world is just fantastic. It's like another example, like Spider-Verse, where they just bring him down into that universe, and it's great because like pop music, it's like it's a resource that you can use, but like just putting in random pop music because you can't be fucked to write a score is like a crutch that we've seen so many times. Like,
I mean, that's that I think that technique where it's not specifically for pop music, but it's just utilizing everyday sounds or basically sampling anything that makes sound. I mean, everything makes sound. It's like the Foley technique or something like that, and also something they used in Blade Runner as well. They sort of just implemented a lot of everyday noise and stuff into that sort of soundtrack and dialogue as well, which when you listen to it back, you've got a lot of dialogue put into the score itself. What about you? Any other big ones that are coming out to you, Gonzalo?
I mean, we're talking about John Williams, and I want to highlight one of the best scores from him, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because, like, I mean, Schindler's List is incredibly subtle and fantastic.
Schindler's is one of my favorite Williams scores.
Like, it's fucking gorgeous, but I don't listen to it often because it makes me cry and feel bad feelings. But like, I will say one of my favorite of his has to be for the prequel trilogy.
That's
We
what
were
yeah.
talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
That's
Duel
okay.
of Fates.
That's a really interesting example of score as well, and one I was going to bring up at least
Yeah.
one example of is where a film I don't like. Episodes 1, 2, and 3 is just kind of a meme.
Yeah.
I don't like those films, but
I
by
love the score
God,
for it.
John
Absolute
Williams was
bangers.
trying his hardest
Holy
to
shit.
resurrect those
Yeah.
films.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
they're
I know.
so Duel of the Fates, amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Duel of Fates.
What? I was
It
wondering.
just-
I was supposed to say, there's nothing that
Yeah.
interesting in the sequels. Do you think he just stopped?
No, John Williams. I always kind of got a bit annoyed when every time like a new Star Wars song came out, John Williams got nominated for an Oscar for it, and I was like, really? I didn't think any of his
I
sequel
don't think-
scores
I
were that
couldn't
memorable.
hum any of this.
Ray's theme is actually okay, and some of the reworked original themes are okay. But
Okay, I watched an entire video from like a musician like deconstructing it. He did something really smart for Ray's theme.
Yeah.
So what he did is he basically put a little bit of every other character's theme into Ray's theme, just because no one told him what the fuck was gonna happen with her. So he couldn't like really
know.
foreshadow.
That's
Yeah,
so
he couldn't
smart.
foreshadow anything with her theme. So he thought, I'll foreshadow everything just in case and see what sticks. So there's actually some like Palpatine shit inside of Ray's theme. So like he could elevate that later on and stuff. So like
John
technically,
Williams was doing what no one at Disney was doing, and that was
Yeah,
actually making
trying.
a plan.
Yeah.
And he was
He
just
was
making
trying.
the score.
he was
Oh
fucking
my
trying.
God.
Yeah,
That's why he is at the top level though, and one of the greats.
yeah.
Is because of
Honestly,
that sort of thing.
because like even when you give him the worst shit, he still makes something out. Also, Alexander Courage, he's the one who wrote the original Star Trek theme for the original
Thank you.
'60s show. Yeah,
Well,
where no man has gone before.
another
Dun,
film
dun, dun,
score
dun, dun, dun,
which I
dun.
really wanted to talk about, and it's one that's actually
Yeah.
quite ironically, it's quite traditional, it's quite romantic, and it's one that kind of throws back to that 20th century stuff. But it does it in a way, and I don't know how. And this is Paul Thomas Anderson's Phantom Thread, score by Johnny Greenwood. Either of you seen Phantom Thread?
No.
I have not. No.
No, I own the 4K. You can borrow it one time.
Gee, thanks.
And it's one it's purposely overtly romantic. Like Paul Thomas Anderson actually, Johnny Greenwood worked on the score for a bit, and then he like sent him some stuff, and then Paul Thomas Anderson was like, "No, it's too dark. Like you're spoiling stuff that's going to happen in the film. I need it to be more deceiving." And so what he did, he was like, "I want something really romantic," and so he was like, "Right, okay, I'll make a really like proper old school like back levels of like romance style of music." It's a absolutely beautiful piece of music, and one that still pisses me off it didn't win the Oscar for, because it's just so captivating. And it's also like there's just something about it that it has that deceptive quality, but there's also truth in the music as well. There's also truth in what it's saying, and this whole sort of this romance between what was his name? I can't remember. Daniel Day-Lewis's character. Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely blanked on the name.
Reynolds something.
Reynolds. Yes,
Yes,
Reynolds.
Reynolds
Thank you.
something, yes.
And yeah, there's just some score. There's a bunch of ones I actually want to tell people to listen to. And there's Alma, Never Cursed, Sandalwood 1 and 2, and For the Hungry Boy. And there is this really, because if you ever watch Phantom Thread, there is a very weird quality to it. It is a very strange film. It's an astonishing looking film, but it's also Reynolds is a very interesting character and one who sort of uses people, and once he's bored with his muse, he'll find another muse because he's a dressmaker and he needs that sort of inspiration for his dresses. And there's just something about Johnny Greenwood's score that is it just enraptures everything. It enraptures the romance. It enraptures the weirdness of this guy and just the complications between this relationship. It's an absolutely incredible piece of music. So I highly recommend listening to Phantom Thread's score by Johnny Greenwood. Which is it's not talked about enough. I mean, I'm pretty sure I saw it in some like top 50 like best score websites and stuff like that. But it's a really mesmerizing piece of music, is how I describe it as.
I've got a question about score, because I was just thinking here. How do we work in films like your Whiplashes
Oh,
and
right.
your Tars, where
Tar. Oh, sorry, carry on. There's a funny thing about Tar is that it couldn't qualify for best original score because they used too much
this
non-original music. Yeah.
Oh right, okay, but so maybe not as much Tar. But I'm like a film that's maybe more music central, where maybe a lot of the score comes from the film
playing
itself.
different. Yeah,
but
yeah.
Like Whiplash, obviously the scenes are intensified by the drumming and everything.
Yeah.
Like, do they still qualify as a score?
That's interesting, actually. That's a really interesting question. But for the Tar example is interesting because, well, it's like they are just playing like back. You know, they're just playing like different symphonies or like in this key
It's
and
not
stuff like that.
original
It's
stuff.
not original.
Right. Okay, I didn't
it's
know
not
that.
written for the film. So if you're playing that, I mean, it's a piece of music, and maybe not a lot of people might not just listen to that on its own. But it isn't an original score. It is just music that's played in the film.
Okay.
But I will say that some like, despite it not being original, like you can play the same sheet music in different ways. Like even if you're playing the exact same notes and the exact same tempos, you can really inject that music with something different. Like we hear, like I see this a lot again whenever they like bring pop music down to something, or like they re-sing a song that already existed in a different way, or they do that kind of like adaptation for different scores. Like you can, especially with classical music, you can play them in a different way. So I guess, I mean, Tar kind of uses that a lot with like making the big moments with the soundtracks and everyone is playing and stuff to tell a different story and carry different tones. It's not just, hey, there's some people playing, like it's telling a story through that specific piece of music that could be used in a very different
Tar
way, depending,
I know I spent a lot of time in Tar, but Tar it's quite a quiet film though. For a lot of it,
Right,
it's a lot of silence, kind of.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting because obviously when
It's
she's
a
in the
good
orchestra,
contrast.
it is a great
Yeah.
contrast. You know, when she's in, conducting and things like that, it's very, very loud film, and then when she's outside of it, things get very, very quiet, which is a good juxtaposition. I think.
Danny Elfman's Spider-Man, the first
Oh,
one, obviously.
iconic,
None of the
iconic.
others.
Yes.
None of the other. I don't.
Yes.
I
mean,
could.
just for
I don't
Raimi's.
know Tom Holland's Spider-Man.
I
theme.
don't know. I don't care.
I don't know.
The Raimi,
I don't know
the
his
Raimi
theme.
trilogy score.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
so good.
That is
That's what I
iconic,
thought.
yeah.
I think
Or Danny
Spider-Man.
Elfman's Batman score.
Yeah.
You know, that's.
Yeah.
I'd say that's even better than his
the
Spider-Man
MCU
score.
has issues with scores in general.
Oh,
like it's not up until
The
like
MCU.
Infinity
The
War
MCU.
that they were like, oh yeah, no, we have a theme for the Avengers. Let's remember to actually use that. Like they're very weird with scores. But I will say like another one that is a superhero movie but does a way better job than any superhero movie I've ever seen of making like you get into it is the Incredibles score.
That was one of my
Yeah,
honorable
he brought-
mentions I was
yeah.
going to talk about is the Incredibles.
Yeah, yeah.
That score, because it's jazzy, it's got a lot of
Yeah.
Bond themes in it. It's
That's
very
the
spy,
thing. That's the
thriller.
thing.
It's
Gino went with
60s,
like,
is
yeah,
that
we're
right?
doing
It's 60s
secret
sort of thing.
superheroes. Hey, what if instead of like going with like replicating the Superman theme with like the nice trumpets and stuff? What if we do James Bond? And he fucking nailed it. Honestly, they did such an incredible job
They
for
walked
that
into
score.
that studio and went, "You like jazz?" And then he went, "Boom, Incredibles."
Speaking of jazz, you had one other
Yeah.
score you wanted
Yeah.
to mention.
I did.
Uh-huh.
I've forgotten.
You forgot it.
How
How did you forget
I've
it?
been jumping through so many scores recently. Like, oh
I
my
get it
God.
though. I had a couple that I wanted to mention and I forgot completely.
Oh, what was that?
It was Babylon, wasn't it?
Oh, it was Babylon.
Babylon, yeah.
Right, yes, sorry. I forgot about that. It's the only part of Babylon I liked.
Yeah.
Was the score. The score of Babylon, it works well on intensifying the scenes that you talked about. I don't think the scenes needed any more intensifying because they're a bit too crazy for me. Have you
Yeah.
seen it yet?
I've still not watched it yet. I remember because we talked about we were doing the Oscar episodes. I'd
Yeah.
listened to the album.
Yeah,
I hadn't
I
seen the
remember you
film
seen-
because
yeah.
I wanted to see what all the fuss was about. And I'll tell you one thing: it was better than what won for best score this
What
year.
won for best score this
It won. It was all
What
Quiet on
did
the
it
Western
win?
Front. It was Hans Zimmer light.
Ugh.
It was.
Anyway,
Oh,
I
okay.
agree that I mean I didn't I should probably revisit Babylon at some point. I feel it's one of those crazy films I probably should have watched with somebody that could share the craziness with me because I was like, "Ugh." But all of it's just incredible. But the final bit, which I think is the one that was the most popular, it was like, dun, dun,
Yeah,
dun,
it's in the
dun,
montage.
dun, dun.
Yeah.
The montage of cinema. I have to admit, even though I was really tired and quite fed up, I was bobbing my head along in the cinema to that. I was like, let's go! Babylon soundtrack is amazing. Right, this is where I was coming to. Right, you need to answer me this, because I do think this maybe falls into soundtrack.
Yeah.
But I know you're saying your name.
Your name, yeah.
That soundtrack if
it was an original song that is recorded in like this
it's like
vocalist.
all of it. It just confuses me, because I'm pretty sure every song in that will end up having some vocals. I think it kind of counts as soundtrack over score.
I guess, yeah, I think it does. I mean, I know the songs you're talking about.
Man.
Technicalities, it's. I mean, it wouldn't qualify for the Oscar, Kyle, if that's what you're asking.
Oh, the Oscars just hate animation anyway. So animation isn't cinema.
I know.
I was just thinking, one film that I think would have had a good score, but for some reason I can't think of it. Pinocchio.
Pinocchio did have a really nice score, actually.
I was like, I remember.
A really, really good score.
I imagine that. I was like, I was trying to remember, especially when he's in.
It was nominated for its score as well.
Wasn't it? 'Cause I was like, especially when he was in, not to spoil the film that's almost a year old, but when he was in the dead bits.
Yeah.
Pinocchio's fine. Don't cry, kids. When he was in the dead bit, I just remember that being quite like, I remember being captivated by the score in that. So I was like, that must have been quite.
No, actually, it's getting released on Criterion.
I saw that.
Month.
The art. Oh,
incredible!
My God.
Incredible. Well, Gonthal, do you have any other scores you wanna mention before I do my final big ass list?
God, there's so many good scores, but
But I can't name any.
I will give an example of one where I thought the score sounded really interesting, but I didn't think it matched the movie at all. I recently watched Elemental, and that's an interesting score. I don't get why it's in this movie, but
Quick sidetrack. What did you think of the film? You're bring the mic over me. You can't hear me. What did you think of the film?
Oh, what did I think of the film? Sorry, I couldn't hear you there. It cut out for a second.
I should probably move closer.
No, it was interesting. It was a movie that had a lot of potential, a lot of really good scenes, but overall I think was just bad. It's a shame because I don't know.
You thought it was okay. You give it a 7. You liked it. You liked it. Yeah.
I think weirdly, I wouldn't say the person's name. Somebody sounded up pretty well. There, it was the really well in the kind of world building as they did with Zootopia.
Yeah.
But as much as it was meant to be a rom-com, that's where they kind of fell through.
Yeah.
Which is
that's the thing.
That's the most
yeah.
interesting part of that film. Is the rom-com aspect.
I would say it had some of the worst, most weird pacing I've seen in a Pixar movie in a long time. Like it felt like it was about to end like 3 or 4 times during the movie. It was really weird the way they arranged the scenes, the way they worked with some of the symbology and stuff. But again, like some of the ideas were fantastic. I really liked the whole like immigration story, the whole fact of like, the parent actually never pushing her to be anything. She just pushed herself, but blamed it on him kind of thing. Yeah, no, it's got really interesting and really good, powerful moments. But then it's just structured really weird, and it flows really weirdly, and the romantic aspect of it is very weak. It wasn't like a whole disappointment because I wasn't expecting anything, but like, it was one of those where I'm like, damn, I wish it had more time to cook.
Well, thanks for the elemental sidebar there.
Yes, anyways, yes. So I was going to mention just a classic that brings me like giddy energy every time I hear it. The Pirates of the Caribbean soundtrack.
Yeah, the one.
It just makes you feel like that like sense of adventure, and I would say there's some really weird soundtracks that also work really well, like in a lot of slashers. I don't know if it's Friday the 13th. I think it's Friday the 13th, the one that goes
It's so funny. Gonthal was singing and he cut out for us, so we don't actually know what he's
singing. Do you know the one where it's like the whispers and it just does the like the sound thing? I think that's Friday the 13th.
I think that's.
But
L Street?
Oh, I don't know.
L Street.
Yeah, like
I'm thinking
it's like a whisper.
I'm thinking it's a Suspiria when they're like whispering witches, like they're telling you the spoiler.
No, it's just like percussion done with whispers. Again, I can't do it without the Discord filter filtering it out.
obviously, music. Is almost like for some horror. It's so pivotal.
It's essential.
To that genre.
So essential.
For me, like Exorcist is just like similar to Halloween in terms of its piano and chord progression, but I love that. I think it's really eerie, and pianos, man. And also Angelo Badalamenti, who did scores for Mulholland Drive, Twin Peaks, Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me. Twin Peaks is a show. No, but genuinely, he makes some absolutely.
Plus, by the way,
his score for Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me and Laura's theme, which is obviously in the show, manages to be really beautiful and almost tear-jerking because it's like sort of almost angelic, and then immediately just goes straight into the darkness. And it's that whole sort of dichotomy of what Twin Peaks is. Angelo Badalamenti's a genius. he actually passed away last year.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Well, my girlfriend will not forgive me if I don't mention the score for The Expanse, one of her favorite scores ever for the show. By Quentin Shorter.
Get out of here! Get us film scores. Get out of here! I don't know The Expanse.
Well, he's worked in film. It counts. No, but like you mentioned Twin Peaks, I'm gonna take.
I was totally Firewalk With Me, but jeez, right, okay. A technicality, right? Because they'll use.
He has a film version of that show, so you can just throw it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Damn it.
Is there a film of The Expanse? Then we can talk. No, I'm only joking. Right, I'm gonna rattle through my big list here that I've got in front of me because some of them have been mentioned, right? But because Nolan is obviously really big right now because of Oppenheimer, which one of us haven't seen. I want to talk about Ludwig Göransson's score, not just for that film. I think the score for Oppenheimer is much like Hans Zimmer's Dunkirk score. Elevates that film. It brings that whole pace. I haven't seen it. Really makes that.
No.
And the guy's seen Elemental, but he's not seen Oppenheimer.
Elemental wasn't Disney Plus, okay? Right. When Oppenheimer comes to streaming services,
don't watch it on your goddamn TV or your laptop. Jesus.
I'll watch it on my tiny phone, and I'll put it as far away from you as possible.
Ludwig Göransson's score for Tenet actually is right. Say what you will about Tenet. You can dislike that, and that's absolutely fair enough. I'm like a proponent for that film. But Ludwig Göransson's score, which is mainly using like electric guitars as well as synths, and also playing the songs in reverse and having to figure out if the song would work in reverse, absolute genius. I love his score for Tenet. It's enthralling.
That's a technical achievement.
That is a technical achievement, and one
straight up.
The Oscars overlooked, of course. And I will say, while we're on Nolan, Hans Zimmer's best score of all time, Interstellar.
Yes.
It might not be my favourite Nolan film. It was in my top 5 when we did our episode. But that score is astounding. Like he was like, I'm going to try an organ, guys. And it works.
Yeah. It's just
going
so well. Picking up every instrument and going, this is one
obviously you have Cornfield Chase, which is the most iconic piece of music from that. But also No Time for Caution and Mountains. I
love the one in the I don't know what it's called, but the one in the Frozen Planet with Dr. Man. That's one of my favorite scores, just because it goes to silent at some points, and it's just like it just feels like what the fuck is going on. No, it's fantastic. It gives that gothic kind of feel that really reminds you of that old-fashioned gothic horror, which really fucking space is very what the heck,
the kind of
Lovecraftian as fuck.
Good shout, Lovecraftian.
Lovecraftian indeed. I also want to give a shout out to I'm playing copyright there. I was going to play the piece of music for you. No, I want to give a shout to College, who aren't really big on their they don't do a lot of film scores, but they did the film score for Drive, which is very 80s and inspired. But also, which I think is an even better score than that, is Oniotrix Point Never's score for Good Time. I actually mailed you guys when I was listening to this the other week, and I was like, guys, the Good Time score is so good. That's one where. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It's
with
Robert Pattinson.
The
the Safdie brothers. That is one where, once again, mainly synths, really electronic, but it's one that fills you with a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of pressure in it. There's a lot of it feels like you're on a chase throughout the whole thing. I mean, the whole film is kind of like a chase. People, cat and mouse thing. It's a great preset. It feels kind of filthy. I don't know what it is about that score, but that film is kind of
matches the movie perfectly.
Yeah, it matches. Yeah. Everyone's a filthy bastard in it.
Yeah.
And I love that score for for that as well. But I wanted to say Bernard Herrmann's scores for Taxi Driver and Vertigo as well, especially the song Scotty Tells Madeline. That score is absolutely enchanting because of Vertigo's one of my favorite films.
Right, I hope there's one on your list because if you haven't said it by the end of it,
okay,
I think we're going to all be in shock.
Okay, I'm going to say you're not going to predict this one. The score for Steve Jobs.
I did not predict
is
that.
absolutely mate. If you want to concentrate,
that one?
Wait. Which one of the two Steve Jobs?
The Fassbender one, the Danny Boyle one.
Okay. I saw the bad one.
That's just
okay,
Jobs,
damn it.
Yeah, it's just Jobs. The Daniel Pemberton score, guys. If you ever want to concentrate on a piece of work, play the Steve Jobs soundtrack. It's so it just like zones you in. It's absolutely enthralling. I love that piece of music. Like I was saying, a piece of music where I did not like the film, but the score is absolutely enchanting. I mean, it's Miles Davis and it's Lift to the Scaffold, a French New Wave film, which he did the score for. It's Miles Davis, man. He's one of the most iconic jazz musicians of all time. It's going to be good. Her, Arcade Fire, who did the score for Her, I mean, that is just kind of soft, it's tender, it's futuristic. It works brilliantly for that film. After Yang last year, who's is it Asuka Matsumaya?
Talked about that movie a bunch. Yeah.
Asuka Matsumaya that's a really meditative, peaceful piece of music which I loved. And Let the Right One In by John Soderquist, one of my favorite horror films as well. That score is also can be really eerie, really romantic, really tender, really loving. I think that film score is absolutely beautiful. But I'm going to finish off with my hot take, which I thought I was going to talk about in the hot takes episode, but I did the score thing instead because this ties into the score. And that is Nick Cave and Warren Ellis' score for Blonde. Now, Blonde last year was also, I did a whole 20-plus minute review of that because it was so controversial. Really and I'm a big defender of it. You know, you can challenge me on that. I'll defend that film. You know, I'll die on that hill. I don't think it is you know, all these terrible things of what people think it is. And a large part of that, and the reason I bring up this score is because that film is just, we talked about films that elevate, you know, the scores that elevate the film, but this score just is the film. Like, when you watch this film, there is no way in hell there could be any other piece of music put to this whatsoever. It's one that I think is just tragic, melancholic. It's one that otherworldly, enchanting. I could say so many adjectives, Kyle.
Well, I'm saying weird because I listened to it today.
You listened to it today in the car, which I was like,
no, actually, no, I listened to it. I was going to go for like a wee 10 minutes. Lie down. I just listened to it, and as I said to you, I've never seen this film, but I felt sad.
It's sad. It's
like,
a sad
score. I feel bad for the character. Okay, like, that's how well I think it translated.
But listen, I'm going to give you a quote from the director, Andrew Dominic. He describes it as pure yearning, always coming and never arriving, great beauty, just out of reach. And that's that sort of ethereal, haunting quality. It's one that is, for me, it's really beautiful. It's one that, you know, I remember when the film ends, there's this song, the opening song is called Pearl, and it's also, which is the closing song is World of Light, but that and Pearl are quite interchangeable. There's only a few differences to those pieces of music. But when the film ended, I mean, I cried at the end of it, right? And it's their music just made me sit and watch the credits all the way through. Because I was like, that piece of music is just so, just otherworldly and beautiful. And the end credits are like, they take you into the stars and stuff. And with that imagery, and it's just the credits. It's literally just the credits. And I was like, I can't stop watching this because I was so moved by it. And like I was saying, World of Light, Pearl, Gemini, which has these great haunting vocals in it as well, and I can't remember. It's something, an angel standing over a subway grate, which is quite eerie and terrifying, which sort of elevates the sort of
great title,
disgusting imagery. Disgusting imagery of what you see on screen as well. And Peroxide, which has this great thing called counterpoint, where two melodies play over each other and aren't in sync, but it just works just astoundingly well. It's one of my favourite film scores ever. And like I said, it wasn't even nominated for the Oscar last year, which is an absolute disgrace. And it's mainly synths, and I think maybe a bit of organ was played in it as well, and you can kind of hear it on Peroxide. I
mean, Oscar nominations for best scores are even more of a hit and miss than normal movies.
Than a lot of things.
But they really do not give a fuck about sound design.
No matter what you think of Blonde, you cannot take away Nick Cave and Warren Ellis's work they did on that film. I think that's, without question, I think it's absolutely fantastic piece of music. And obviously, I mean, Nick Cave has had a very, very tragic life as well, and I think he actually puts... This shouldn't work, right? This is why this works, right? This shouldn't work. He takes one of his songs that he... Obviously, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, very famous band. He takes one of his songs he did on Ghost Teen, called Bright Horses, takes away the vocals and just uses the instrumental in the film and in the score and in the album. Yeah. And you're like, that shouldn't work. A song made years before putting it in. But it does work, and also because of the meaning behind that song and how he lost his son, and very similar to, Marilyn Monroe having like, abortions and miscarriages and whatnot. It works fantastically well. I cannot rave about that enough. I actually really want to buy that soundtrack. I really should get the vinyl for that. Right, so I guess that will kind of wrap things up today, unless you guys want to mention another piece of music that you want to recommend to anyone.
I don't want to screw myself over twice.
Okay. So, thank you very much, Gonzalo, for joining me.
It's been absolutely great.
And thank you, Kyle, as well.
Pleasure.
Look, that'll wrap up today's episode. On next week's episode, we will be talking about AI in film. Because obviously AI is the big hot topic right now, especially with the strikes going on. We thought we'd talk about AI and sort of its depictions on film. Some of our favourites and some that we think maybe potentially could happen or probably not. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not a scientist. Anyway, we just gave our opinion on all those film scores. Listen to them all, guys. They're all fantastic. And really our opinions as well on Dumb Money. But at the end of the day, those were our unwanted opinions. Thank you very much.